In my work as a guide, I've met thousands of fly anglers over the years, and I've seen how they work with their leaders, what setups they have, and what knots they do. So in my own setups, I've been cherry picking different ideas from different people to what I feel is an easy to work with solution, is easy to maintain, prevents tangles. Yeah, just simply for me makes sense at least. And whenever I make a fishing video on YouTube, I get questions about what leaders I use and how there's stuff to be explained. So I'm gonna make a full-on video here where I show everything when it comes to my leaders, from the smallest nymph and dry fly to the largest that I fish in my waters around me at least, that is big pike flies. Some of them are a bit similar, like just thinner dimensions and stuff, but I'm gonna show several different leaders from start to finish, how I tie them, and then the list of all 7 leaders you find in the video description in fine detail. I really put down all the different information and numbers as I tie them. This is not the right way to do leaders. You can of course do them in other ways. Something all these setups have in common is that they share the same way that I attach the fly line to the backing. So I'm just gonna show that first, so we have that question out of the way. So when you have the end of the backing, you take the line like this and fold it double over a pretty long part, make a loop, and with the big loop you go through 3 times and close it. So you have a loop right here. So here I take the end of the fly line, thread it through the loop, and here it's important that this loop that you made is larger than your fly reel. So you can thread the loop through, and there you have the loop-to-loop attachment. This method of doing it goes easily through the rod guides, is strong, and it's easy to change the fly line. The first setup is gonna be my 3-weight Euro nymphing setup. And I make it in 2 versions. One when I fish for like normal fish up to maybe 4 or 5 pounds. And then a bigger, heavier setup for when I fish for sea-round brown trout and they grow up to 15 pounds or even above. And the only thing that varies is the dimensions. Starting at the end of the fly line, and there I will attach the cider material or the 2-tone indicator tippet, making a loop like this, go around it, and in between. And tighten it. Cut off the rest. There we go. We made the loop. Now we're gonna thread it onto the fly line. Like that. There. And in this end here, we're gonna attach a tippet ring. We're just gonna use a simple clinch knot here. There we go. I just cut off here a piece of leader that I had just to hold on to something. Preferably you should look for tippet rings which come on a little bait clip or something like this. That's much easier to tie if you have something to hold on to. In the tippet ring here now, we're gonna attach our first piece of fluorocarbon. Again, simple clinch knot. There we go. Cutting off the excess, and the observant have seen that I left the tag of the colored section. This is often when you fish Euro nymphing, you want to have the same waterline, like the same level in the surface, so you keep the same depth through the drift. And this little tag end is a great thing to have just in the waterline, and this is super visible. If I don't need it, I can always cut it off afterwards, but I love having it there. It's really visible. One alternative rig that I will experiment with using this year is to add on a much longer part of this two-tone tippet, over 10 meters. That is a rig with greater sensitivity, but it can take some more practice before you get used to, compared to the rig I show here. So moving on here from the spool, this all depends on depth, of course. I'm just, for this example, gonna take a little bit more than a meter. Next tippet ring. There we go. And from here, this is where we're gonna attach the flies. So I'm just gonna do the first one here. Gonna make a rig for 2 flies. Gonna cut off the excess. Take off some leader material. So a cutoff gonna be like 80 centimeters or something. And then I take the other end and tie it in here in the tippet ring as well. So here we have the loop. I just separate them like that. From here I take a separate piece of tippet again, same dimension. This is gonna be like a dead end, which just gonna finish the knot here, cut off the excess, like that, and cut off so it's just an empty part like that. So you see here I just have an empty tag there. So when I fold this back here, I have like a big loop and a little separation knot in between. So this is the setup that I make, and I leave it like this at home, or when I rig the rod, I just have it like this. So storing it, like before a fishing trip, I just store it like this, and the loop, thread it around the reel seat, and there you have it as a ready leader to just be fishing. At the water as well, you can just put the rod parts together, thread the leader through, and then you just have this loop to thread around the base of the reel as well. So everything is prepared to this point until I come out to the water. And at the water, it's there you want to decide what flies you're going to put on here. So there, you can then take one of the parts of the loop and cut it off, leaving one short tag and one long tag. And the separation knot there, it makes that the leader is going to stand out a little bit like this. It's not going to make that the fly stand straight out like at 90 degrees, but it's going to separate it a little bit from the leader, and I think that is enough. Just to show here, I'm going to put on 2 flies here on the leader, so you get the full idea of how it's going to look in the water when you're fishing. Okay, so here you have the rig. I'm gonna try to use the clear background here. You have the bottom fly and you have the top fly there. And the separation knot that we did helps that the fly will stand out a little bit from the line like that. I got the question from some people asking, like, how do you make it that the fly stands 90 degrees out like this? And that's not the idea. That's like not what's gonna be in the water. Then you would need to have a very stiff and thick leader to be able to do that. The only thing is that we don't want it to be like laying against the leader. It should be a little bit of a separation there so it can move freely. So the reason why I do 2 tippet rings in this setup is that I'm easily able to change all the different parts of the rig. So for example, if I decide to, I'm gonna fish in deeper water or shallower water, I can easily just shorten this part here above the flies. Or if I feel that I wanna have a new fly on here, so I cut it off and the tag that is left is too short to make a new knot after I changed fly a couple of times, then I can easily just replace that part. And another scenario you're gonna thank me for recommending to do this rig is if you get a tangle. Then it's so easy to just, well, take away one part. So for example, if you have a big tangle of everything, like a whole mess like this, blah, you're gonna try to fix that. Now it's, you know what happens out at the water. You get a tangle. Then you can just, when everything is a mess there, you can reach in this ball of line and cut off. So here we have a big ball of tangle here. Let's wrap it around even more like that. You can just cut off the part that is above the line and take that away. And then you just have this simple rig to fix. It usually goes in just a few seconds. And then you can tie it on again. So easy, so convenient, saves a lot of time. And for me as a guide, be able to fix a tangle like that in just a few seconds, that could take several minutes otherwise. It is well worth it. They say that, well, and it's true, that fluorocarbon sinks faster than nylon. I would not choose fluorocarbon if it was only for that reason, because fluorocarbon is much more expensive than nylon is and is less environmentally friendly than nylon. So why do I still use fluorocarbon then? Well, the answer is that fluorocarbon is more stiff than nylon is. So if you use nylon in a rig like this, or at least when I use nylon instead of fluorocarbon in a rig like this, I get more tangles. The fluorocarbon that is stiffer, it gets less tangles, and it's easier also to fix the tangles if you get them. So at least for now, for carbon is what I use. The next setup that we're gonna make is my like standard fly line and leader setup, like for dry fly fishing, for nymph fishing on a normal fly rod. It can be wet flies, light streamers. Then this is the setup that I'm going with. So here we have a normal weight forward fly line. It's a floating one, something you should have for dry fly fishing. And here we have webbed loop in the front. Recently I saw a very interesting video from Mad River Outfitters where they talk about the fly line stiffness compared to the stiffness of the leader. It is a half an hour long video if you want to dig more into that topic, but in short terms it is that talking about when this fly line rolls out during the cast, you want a leader that transforms that energy, so not being too soft and not be too stiff either, so it continues to roll in a nice way. And I do that with a tapered leader that I grew fond of. There is tapered leaders that doesn't match well with your fly line. There is an easy way to check this by just putting them next to each other and sort of do like test to bend them. If they sort of bend the same way, then they are relatively like even in how stiff they are. I don't feel that it needs to be perfect, that they perfectly synchronize, but somewhere in the ballpark. What they were putting in effort in is removing the loop. Sure, I would consider doing that if I was not a guide. I feel that when I borrow my rods to guests, I want it to be easy to change the whole leader. Just put on a fresh one. So I'm just simply gonna show the way I do. If you feel that, I definitely recommend you watching that video. I'm gonna link it down below. You find the link at the section where I talk about my dry fly and nymph setups. But I'm just gonna simply show the way I do, and it works great for me. The turnovers that they talk about, perhaps a few percent more pretty than I can do with this setup, but everything is a compromise in life. Here you have the fly line, the pre-made loop. There I go through it with my tapered 12-foot leader. Make a clinch knot and tighten it. It's important that you hold the loop here, so you don't hold far away from it, because this is a weaker part than the rest of the fly line. Cut off the excess real close. There we have it. So when you make the connection there, you don't want it to be overly stiff on one part over the other. So they should bend pretty smooth when you go through it like this. That's the goal. If it can't do that and the leader is just too strong, they gave so many examples in that video, so go and check it out. But this, I would say, is a good enough leader for me. In a recent video, I did dry fly fishing and I used a leader that was 2 rod lengths long. And that's something I often use. So I'm gonna do that in this example. So here we have the 12-foot taper leader. That is what I'm using. If I wanna make a 2 rod lengths leader, like an 18-foot leader, I don't go and change the tapered leader. And there is some like 14, maybe 15-foot tapered leaders on the market, but that is 20. I don't think there are many that are like that. And you don't need it either, because we're gonna put on tippet here, so don't worry. But I'm gonna begin here with putting on some tippet. Here I'm gonna use the same dimension as the leader. So here we have the tapered leader. I'm gonna put on some tippet, and when I connect two pieces of line like this, I'm gonna use a surgeon's knot. And look also how I work with my hands. I put them next to each other for quite a bit. Then I form a loop, hold it in my hand like that. Then I go through and I grab both pieces like that, put my finger through and catch them. There we go. And that way I can do this knot in pitch black. I don't have to even look what I'm doing, because I'm always taking support with my fingers, cutting off the excess. There we go. So from here, I'm gonna put on some flies. So I put on, simply to save some time here, I'm gonna put on the same rig that I made in the previous section here with the Euro nymphing setup. So I'm gonna tie on a tippet ring that is pre-rigged with 2 flies on it here. And cut off the excess. There we go. So this rig, just as it sits, I use a lot. It's perfect when you're indicator fishing, to just on your normal fly rod setup, put on an indicator somewhere here on the leader, and you have 2 flies below. Super effective way of fishing. Or I do this with dry flies, so I have 2 dry flies here. I'm also still using fluorocarbon, but when I do dry fly fishing, I prefer to have them further away from each other than this. In most scenarios, you can do short as well, but I prefer to have at least a meter, like 3-4 feet something, between the flies, if both are dries. Or you can do dry fly and dropper. This rig has many possibilities. It is super versatile. And yes, I am dry fly fishing with a metal ring on the leader. It is so small. This is 1.5 millimeter metal ring, so it doesn't sink, it doesn't put that much weight into the setup, so I think it works great even on dry fly. But of course, this rig is like, if you put it on out on a lake or completely like a very slow pool, and you're gonna leave that for several minutes, then it's not gonna be as buoyant as if you didn't have the metal ring and that you instead had a nylon leader. So if I'm gonna do a lot of lake dry fly fishing, in that scenario I would make another leader, but it's so uncommon that I do that. But simply just replace this with nylon and do a surgeon's knot and leave a tag end sticking out to attach the dropper fly, and then you have a more high floating setup. I feel here a little bit that I take for granted that you're gonna use 2 flies. And again, I'm just speaking from my own fishing, where I love to use 2 flies on the leader. Should you do it? Well, it can make your fishing a whole lot more effective, but casting comes first. If you do casting that quite frequently get tangles, then I would say practice more on your casting before you move on to fishing with 2 flies on the leader. Because the second fly, it causes some more tangles to happen more frequent, but the tangles that you get is much worse with that second fly in the system, so to say. The one we just made, this leader setup, it is the most all-round rig that I use. I use it for many different things. If I fly fish for carp, or if I fly fish for Arctic char or sea trout, or it's so many different types of fish that I use this rig for. Like when it comes to nymphs, light streamers, dries, surface gators, you name it, crab patterns. So there are many different dimensions that I use on the different parts here. I'm gonna list two of them down in the video description. One is like a light, more suitable for dry fly and small nymphs. And the second one is a little bit more for big fish, like this. I wrote the specifics for a great like all-around setup for nymph fishing and small streamers in Battle Hill Lodge, for example, on Iceland, where we fish for sea trout. I think that suits very well. The light version is more like for Icelandic highlands, and in Sweden, where I've fished and guided for many years, it's like Grayling. It suits perfect for. Now we're gonna move on to my biggest passion in fly fishing, which is streamer fishing. So the leader setup that I have attached to this fly line here, it is pretty much identical when it comes to my double-handed and single-handed streamer fishing. It's just the dimensions and lengths that I just vary after the circumstances. This leader is 12 foot and it's 0.34 in the end. That is the leader that I use by far the most, that I mentioned in the end here. It is not so important what thickness it is here, because we're gonna put on a tippet on it as well. But this dimension, I feel it's enough to catch almost any type of fish. It is that strong. And it's not too thick either when it comes to fishing in ultra clear water and really spooky fish and such. From here, I attached with clinch knots a tippet ring. This is Vision's tippet ring in size large, so it's a bit bigger than what we've been using before. This takes 20 kilo of force before it breaks. And from there, we extend with some leader. Here I use both fluorocarbon and nylon, depending on my mood of the day. No, sorry. It varies mostly if I choose to have droppers, like 1 or 2 flies further up on the leader. We're gonna put on that later on here. It tangles less with fluorocarbon, but we have been using a lot of fluorocarbon until this point, and this is the one that I'm the least sure in my streamer fishing that I will still use fluorocarbon in a couple of years. It is more expensive than nylon, and I don't see a great benefit in it. So we'll see, but for the purpose of this video, I'm gonna use fluorocarbon. So here we have tippet, which is about 1.5 meters. And I'm gonna use the example of putting on a tube fly here. Tube flies is something I use a lot. So here we have a little flash fly. You thread it through, put on the hook with, again, you guessed it, simple clinch knot. There, cut off the excess. And then this is gonna be fixed hook position on this one. So I made the fly so the hook can fit into the tube. There we go. When I do blind fishing in a lake, for example, or in a stream, I love to have a dropper fly on as well. So I'm gonna show that. Just from this setup that we have, we can easily attach a dropper here. So here's the leader connection. I'm gonna just push them to one side. Attach some more leader material. Here we go. Didn't turn out so pretty, this one, because I made it so quick and I didn't moisten the leader before I finished it, but it doesn't matter. We're gonna make one blind knot as well to leave as a distance between the flies. So I use that on this one. Before I tighten this, I'm just gonna moisten this knot a little bit, and that usually prevents that curling to happen, and then you can help the knot a little bit, like pushing it like that, and that usually makes the leader a bit more clean. Fluorocarbon is a bit sensitive to look a bit kinky, but that is fine. There, cut off the excess and leave the tag end. So just to show something different here, we're gonna put on one of my favorite dropper flies for the coastal fishing, and this is tied on a hook. And when it's tied on a hook, I like to attach my streamers with a loop knot. So I make a simple knot like that on the leader, and this is gonna determine the distance already here that it's gonna be sticking out. So you can adjust a little bit. That looks pretty good. And after that, you put on the fly. Put it very close to the small knot there. And then I like to just hold over that and have it locked. Go around a few times, between 4 and 5. And then you go through both the loop like in a normal clinch knot and through the little extra knot that we made. I moistened the knot a little bit and tightened it. Cut off the excess. So I like to make the knot pretty small like this, so it's not able to, the fly is not able to fit inside the loop, and it doesn't eat as much tippet either. I've fished many thousand hours with streamers hanging on droppers, and I see a clear difference in the amount of fish that I catch if I have a too long of a dropper tag or too short of a dropper tag. It should be somewhere around 15 centimeters, I feel. Like 10 to 17, 18. Especially if it gets too short, I feel that I catch less fish. Less fish choose to take this fly. And then depending on fish species, I adjust the distance between the two flies. So here you have a full arm width between the flies, the dropper and the end fly, the point fly as it's called. Full arm length, and that is fantastically effective for example, sea trout, where I feel that if they get two options too close to each other, they have a hard time deciding on which one to take, especially because they are connected to the same line. They have the same movement. I don't know, it's like they can't decide which is the weakest animal out of the two. So they rather just follow it and don't take. That's my experience with doing that. Other species, it works super good to use two flies close to each other. For example, the most clear example where I feel that I caught more fish when I put them closer to each other, That is with perch, the yellow perch that we have in Europe. They liked it more when I had them close to each other. So it's something you can experiment with yourself. So far, even here on streamer setups, the leaders that I made is pretty long, at minimum 1.5 rod length. That is something that my guiding guests, when they come, they're very surprised about that I use so long leaders. And I tie it on for them as well. They've never tried it before. It can be a bit of time to get used to it, but I feel that something that scares a lot of fish is that I see the fly line lands over the fish. If you fished in tropical waters, you know exactly what I talk about. If you put the fly line too close to the fish, they will spook. And that happens with other fish as well. You maybe don't see it as well in places where the water doesn't allow sight fishing. But when you have done proper sight fishing, you know that if you land with a fly line over a fish, it is not good. You very likely spooked it. So the longer leader you have, the less risk you have of spooking the fish with a fly line. So I instead like to have a long taper leader to prevent that from happening. And there, what you can make to, if you buy into that idea and also want to have long leaders, what you can do is to look for leaders that are pretty like strong, so it has good of a turnover power in them to put out these long leaders and turn over the flies. So these are actually what I use on, like, from 7-weight setups and above. I use Salmon leaders. So, but you find all the information about the leaders down in the video description. What comes next here is gonna be my most simple leader setup yet. And throughout this whole video, nothing is gonna be this simple, but it's important to mention them as well. And that is when you fish like a proper sinking line. And actually, when I fish like a intermediate line or a sink 2 or a sink 3 line, the leader that I just showed, I'm using that. But if I use, for example, a proper like sink line, like a sink 5 or sink 7, some pure tungsten line, then it is gonna be a much shorter leader, just so the fly will quickly follow the fly line down in the water column. And let's do the same tippet material here. I'm gonna use the fluorocarbon. Again, you don't need to use fluorocarbon here, but I use it just because I don't want to show 18 different spools of material. So, end of the fly line, we are gonna make perfection loop here. Make a loop, go around it, in between, push through there, and cut off the excess. There. Cut off about 1 meter from the spool. Take the fly line, thread through the loop, and there you have it. That's the leader. Just straight, about 1 meter. This is gonna get the fly down real quick. And here you can just attach your streamer, tube fly or hook fly, whatever you want. Here you have a good example of a bad balanced leader setup, where the leader is just so much softer than the fly line is. And it is extremely short as well, so this is not gonna be any pretty to cast, but it doesn't matter. This is about like flopping out the streamer, getting the fly down to where you want it to have it, where you want it to be. So if you ever want to try fishing booby flies, this is like the setup that you use. You want the fly line that sinks down to the bottom, and then just straight nylon a little bit to where you have this foam fly that suspends over the bottom that you can fish home really slowly. And also standard when it comes to fast sinking lines for salmon fishing, like in early season, high flood. This is extremely common, that you just put on a sink tip or a sinking line and then a short piece of tippet and a fly. Super common. When it comes to the heaviest setup that I use in my fly fishing, it is for targeting pike. And there I've actually a few years ago shifted to fishing pure nylon instead of wire. So the closest thing to the fly is 0.2 millimeter nylon, and I think this has been working great for me. So I haven't talked about it at all before I gotten a couple of years into practicing it and see the pros and cons of it, but I think it's been working great for me. The setup, starting from the reel, you have looped end here as usual, and from here I use 0.60 that I'm just gonna tie with, as you've seen before, normal clinch knot. It works great even in these dimensions. It's pretty similar to a normal tapered leader in dimension. There. Moisten it a bit and cut off the end. The reason why I don't like to have a loop-to-loop connection here is due to that I'm able to comfortably go into a figure eight with a pike that follows. So then this knot will easily slide into the rod tip and continue retrieving in to the thicker leader, and then I just have that outside the rod tip and can do a figure eight. So continuing from here, I will prepare the heavy leader part, and from here we'll take maybe 60 centimeter off the spool. I have a plier with a scissor in it that it's nice to have when you're out pike fishing, cutting these heavy nylons. I put a double barrel crimp tube inside here. When you're crimping, these double barrel crimp tubes, go through it once, go through it again, and now it's just ready to crimp actually. But I like to, as an extra safety, when I'm at home at least, I'm able to just burn this end. So as a last safety stop there, in case it slips out. There. So now it can't go anywhere even before I crimped it. Crimping, you use a crimp tool like this. Put it inside. And just press hard. Once is gonna be enough here. Just crimping on one side, there's gonna be enough. So there you have a loop. Loop there, go through and make another clinch knot here. There we go. And cut off the excess. So far, so good. In the end here, where we're gonna attach our fly, I have two options. Either I put on the fly itself directly on a crimp tube, just like that. And then what happens then is that you need to change the crimp every time that you want to change the fly. Meaning that this will be eaten up quite a lot. But everything here, I mean, you just need to buy quite some crimp tubes, but otherwise the leader material is pretty cheap. And it is an important part of using hard mono in this case, that with pike you need to check your leaders at all times, so that it gets shorter and shorter, and you get a fresh part here, especially closest to the fly, that it happens regularly, that you change that and cut off the closest part. It's a good thing. But here we're gonna do, as I most frequently do in my fishing, you know, we're gonna use a fast attach, so we're gonna crimp it in. Starting with putting on the crimp tube, then the fast attach, through the crimp again, burn the end for safety. I like to flatten it out a little bit while it's hot. You put it against the stop. There. And then you crimp it. So there you have it, the finished leader. It's important that you check this after each pike that you caught, and have these, so you need to have a crimp plier and some crimp tubing with you, so you can just, yeah, shorten this when you need. From here we just clip on the fly, and there you have the ready leader for pike fishing. And a nice feature is that you can add weight like this. It's a little bit more work than, for example, when do a rig for spin fishing for pike, for example. That if you want to put on some weights, you can put on like a cone head and a little bead like this on it. This is something I do. This is something I do pretty frequent. That I put on a cone head and a bead behind it, and then I crimp it. This is an awesome way to add some weight to the setup. So in front of the fly now, you have a little bit of extra weight there that will move and click, and this makes some sound and makes a big difference when it comes to how deep your fly will fish. And you know, when it comes to fly fishing with heavy setups, it's gonna be a bit like, it's gonna, like if you have like a clip-on weight or something like spin anglers use, that is not gonna stay on very well. You can use it, but this is not gonna go anywhere. So if I know that I'm gonna be fishing deep a whole day, I don't have to tie flies dedicated for this. I can rather just put some weight instead in front on the leader. For durability, 1.2 millimeter is enough. I've never had that break on me. I've tried thinner as well, 1.05 millimeter, for example. That I've been close to losing pike on that due to their sharp teeth. So I wouldn't dare to recommend using that. I'm happy using 1.2. It catches fish and it works great. Before I started using nylon, I used wire. I think nylon, it looks better in the water, it's more invisible, and it's also more friendly towards, you know, towards the mouth of the fish. The thick nylon like this is really friendly. It doesn't cut into the fish's lip as much as wire do. So I think it's awesome. The thing I came across when I started using this is that for a little while, like the first day I tried this, I caught less fish than I normally did with wire. It is because from the spool, nylon has a big memory, and when it has this dimension of 1.2 millimeter, it is hard to like stretch this. It's gonna, the memory is gonna stay. So the solution is to like put on a pot of hot water. You boil water on a stove, and then you just hold it straight over like this in the steam from the pot, and just let it cool down in your arms like this. And when you let go, the memory is gonna be gone. So then you have a straight leader. You can put it on your rod. If you fish with this memory on the leader, it's gonna mean that it's gonna affect the fly's movement in the water. The fly is so light, so it's gonna affect when you pass with the fly. These curls are gonna keep the fly swimming in the water, so the movement will be different compared to if it stays straight. Then the fly is gonna be able to drop more compared to with this memory. So you wanna get it rid of, but it's an easy solution. There are scenarios where I fish sander as well, and with the odd chance of hooking into a pike as well. Then I can go down in thinner dimensions if I want on this part closest to the fly. I go down to 0.90 sometimes, or maybe 0.80 if it's unusual to hook into a pike. If you would have gone down to 0.80 or 90, you don't have to use the crimps. Then you can just do like a clinch knot or something. One great tool is this like anti-slip tool that I use if I tighten knots on these heavy materials, especially when you're out fishing and you have slippery hands. You just put the nylon through, and this will hold the nylon so it doesn't slip, and then you can tighten the knot. I use this a lot when I go on tropical fishing, but it goes with me in my pike bag as well. Really good tool to be able to tighten knots. So there you have it. These are the leader setups that I use in my fishing pretty much, at least of now. It will probably be something that I develop through my life, and I will change some tweaks here, but for now, at least, this is working good for me, and I hope you found some inspiration or learned something through this video. And this video wouldn't exist if it wasn't for you leaving the comments, asking questions through the videos that I make. I listen so much to it, and I try to make content that is what you want to see. So I just want to say that I appreciate it so much, and don't be shy to ask these questions that you have when you see a video, because what I want to do is now I don't have to talk about my leaders every time that I am out fishing and making a video. I'm just going to refer to this video. So I want to focus on the fishing when I'm out there filming in the real world. So it's nice to make a little studio film like this and answer definitely one of the most common questions that I get. Hope you enjoyed it, and see you in the next fishing season. Looking forward to it so much. Thanks.